3 people are in custody after a man was fatally stabbed inside an apartment at Kingston Road and Lawrence this morning. We're going to have the latest coming up.
And Bill police say more arrests are coming after violent clashes between Hindu and Sikh groups in Brampton.
And 1,200 workers walk off the job in Brampton after talks break down. This is a live shot from the picket line there. We're going to chat with Brampton's mayor straight ahead.
This is Live at 5. Good evening. I'm Bakari Savage.
And I'm Lena Latifat. Thank you for joining us here on Live at 5. A number of municipal services in Brampton are affected after 1,200 city workers went on strike after failing to reach a new contract.
CP24 Sija Liu joins us live with more from Brampton City Hall. Sija.
Bakari, Lena, some of the major service being impacted right now is transit. Extreme interruptions there. Users are being told to make alternate plans. Other interruptions include recreation centers. Some are closed. Others are operating with reduced hours. Those are just to name a few. After 1,200 city workers walked off the job this morning, this is because the union representing them, CUPE Local 831, says contract negotiations with the city failed to produce a new deal. The employees on strike here work in a number of departments, including public transit, parks and recreation, road maintenance, animal control, courthouse services, bylaw enforcement, building inspections and permits. All those departments experiencing some sort of disruptions right now. Now, bargaining between the union and the city began back on March 31st, but there has been little progress. The main sticking point with negotiations is around wages. The union says wages have gone up for non-unionized employees, but unionized workers have fallen. They are also calling for equal benefits packages that is on par with management. Here's more from the union president on what they're asking for.
We're still optimistic. Our goal is to get a deal for the members, but the employer needs to respect us as well. The cost of inflation, consumer price index has skyrocketed over the last 5 years when we were locked in for a 5-year deal. We fell behind. All we're trying to do is, catch up, provide for our families and, live, a nice and, comfortable life with our families.
In a statement from the City of Brampton's bargaining committee reads in part, CUPE Local 831 has been offered a reasonable multi-year deal that is fair and readily recognizes the important work of our employees and what the community is able to afford. The city negotiated over 9 months in good faith, putting forward a series of offers that are greater than inflation, do not compromise residents' ability to pay. The city is prepared to continue negotiating in this context and welcomes CUPE back to the table to limit the economic disruption to residents and area businesses. Now, to name a few more things that are interrupted during this time, 3 service Brampton kiosks are temporarily closed. Others have longer than usual wait times. City Hall is still open, but you do have to cross the picket line to get inside. Court services also experiencing longer wait times, but the most disruptive thing right now is transit. Major disruptions happening there right now during the evening rush hour. Back to you.
All right, Sija Liu reporting live from the picket line tonight. Sija, thank you for this, and keep it here on CP24. Brampton's Mayor Patrick Brown will be joining us later on in the show to talk more about this job action.
Well, police have 3 people in custody after a man was stabbed to death in Scarborough.
CP24's Beatrice Faisman has been speaking with residents of that building at Kingston Road and Lawrence and joins us live with more. Beatrice.
Lena, certainly the people who live here in this building at Lawrence and Kingston Road are feeling uneasy today. You can see the police presence behind me. This is still an active investigation here at the scene. This is 4175 Lawrence, right at the corner of Kingston, and it's inside a 10th floor unit that this stabbing happened just after 6 o'clock this morning. Let's take you inside now, where I captured Toronto police officers guarding the front door of one of these units. That's where police were called. They found a man with stab wounds, and then they tried to save his life. Tragically, they could not. He was pronounced dead here at the scene. I spoke with the detective sergeant from the homicide squad, Henry Marsman, here at the scene. He tells me the victim is a man in his 40s. He was not a resident here in this building, and police are also wanting to reassure people that this was not a random attack. Here's what Duty Inspector Todd Jocko told us at the scene.
A man and two women have been arrested in relation to this incident. We believe that all parties are known to one another and there is no risk to public safety. We understand that incidents like this can cause concern for the community, and please know that we are dedicating all necessary resources for this investigation.
So that message from police that this was not a random incident is really to quell any tension or anxiety that residents might be feeling here. To know that the victim, along with the three people who police now have in custody, were known to one another, their relationship not revealed. But again, the victim, a man in his 40s, not a resident here in this building. People that I've been talking to say they don't know much about the people who live here, though one woman who lives on the 10th floor is saying it's a husband and wife approximately in their 40s who do live in that unit specifically as well. As for neighbors, they've been concerned. Certainly if you're a father of young children walking by police officers, police tape, the scene of the city's latest homicide is not a pleasant experience, especially when your daughter is asking, Daddy, what happened here? And certainly he's not going to tell his 3-year-old daughter that someone lost their life in this building. And so here's what one of the residents told me. He says that this used to be a seniors building. It's a Toronto community housing complex. Recently, the demographics have changed, and along with it, more crime and more violence.
They have a camera right there. Why didn't they look at the camera? You know, like, I don't know what's going on really, because I'm very disappointed with this building anyway, because this building was a senior citizen building. When all of a sudden, there is unscrupulous people here. You understand? People that shouldn't be here. You know, when I came to this building, it wasn't like this.
The detective sergeant from the homicide squad saying that all three people are still being held in custody. At least they were this afternoon when I spoke to him. At this point, they have not been formally charged, but certainly we do expect some kind of charges to be laid in connection with this murder. Lena and Bakari, back to you.
Okay, reporting live near Lawrence and Kingston, CP24's Beatrice Basement. Beatrice, thank you. Well, York police have released footage of a suspect wanted in a shooting in Market.
Yeah, the video taken from multiple home security cameras shows a suspect wearing all black clothing approach a home on Digby Crescent near Alder Grove Drive just before 4:30 p.m. yesterday. The victim was shot in the leg in the garage of a home and is expected to recover. The suspect fled in a dark-colored, newer model Acura TLX sedan that was also captured on surveillance cameras.
And a man's been arrested in 2 sexual assaults in the West End dating back to 2022. So 26-year-old Jackson Ferreira, you see his photo right here. He's facing 3 counts of sexual assault. And the police began an investigation in January after 2 people came forward claiming that they were drugged and sexually assaulted at a home in the St. Clair and Dufferin area. This was in 2022. Investigators believe there may be more victims.
A young teen cyclist suffered life-threatening injuries when struck by a vehicle in Ajax this morning. CP24 flew over the scene on Rossland Road, west of Westney Road. Durham police say the 13-year-old girl was hit by an SUV while crossing at a marked crosswalk shortly after 7:30. She had to be rescued before being airlifted to a Toronto trauma center. Police are asking any witnesses or anybody with dash cam footage to contact them.
And police say a senior who was hit by a school bus in Richmond Hill earlier this week has died in hospital. The 84-year-old woman was hit on Yonge Street north of Elgin Mills shortly before 3 o'clock Tuesday afternoon. She suffered a head injury, was sent to a trauma center. That's where she died yesterday. Police say that the bus left the scene following the collision, but the driver since has been identified and the investigation remains ongoing. So investigators, they're asking anyone with dash cam video from the area at the time of the incident, please come forward.
All right, 509, 12 degrees. Let's get a check on that drive home with our traffic specialist, Adjoa and Siayabwa, tonight. How goes that drive, Adj?
Still very, very busy. It's to be expected as a Thursday afternoon during rush hour. So in the mix of all the delays, there are a couple of problems, actually. So westbound on the 401, this is as you make your way in the collectors through Warden. It is a stalled vehicle. It's off to the side, but there's a lot of emergency crews that have decided to block the right lane and shoulders, so that's impacting and slowing down your commute. 401 eastbound problems persist. They've been there for some time. Eastbound 401 Express at Weston. It is the right lane of the Express that's blocked with this crash. And if you're on the DVP, northbound delays from Bayview Bloor up to the 401, and definitely busy pockets as the sun starts to go down on the Gardner as you head into and out of the downtown core. Outside of camera view, crews on scene of a collision on Yonge and Elmhurst.
This CP24 traffic report is brought to you by 407 ETR. Enjoy the journey with a stress-free commute.
Well, the province says a milestone has been reached earlier than expected in the Gardner Rehabilitation Project. Drivers, you're going to like this.
Yeah, work on 2 eastbound lanes between Dufferin and Saron. It's now complete. They have reopened. Well, crews are set to begin demolition and reconstruction of 2 center lanes next, which is 4 months ahead of schedule. The province credits changes that allowed work to proceed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Times you can't see them because they're working underneath as well. There's various parts to this project. I had an opportunity to visit here with Mayor Chow at 11 p.m. A couple weeks ago, and there were over 100 individuals working on the project at different parts of the Gardner. So sometimes you might not see it, but today is proof that 24/7 construction is working and that people are seeing the results of that.
The entire project was originally expected to last for 3 years, but the province says it's expected to be finished 1 year ahead of schedule.
Well, the Ford government says the short legislative sitting is why it's been fast-tracking bills with little or no debate.
So the government reduced debate in committee time on its proposed law that would force cities to ask permission to install bike lanes that remove a lane for vehicle traffic. It also passed the fall economic statement with reduced debate. And the statement includes legislation to send $200 checks to Ontario taxpayers. The government's not saying if it's speeding up the passage of bills in order to have an election in the spring, which the premier hasn't ruled out.
It's now 5:11, 12 degrees. You're watching Live at 5.
And we're live on Sandalwood Parkway in Brampton tonight. This is where 1,200 city workers, they're on strike, impacting services, including public transit. We're going to speak with Brampton Mayor Patrick Brown. That's next. Peel police continue to investigate recent protests between Hindu and Sikh groups in Brampton, and more arrests are anticipated.
Yeah, CP24's Lindsay Biscaya joins us live with the very latest. Lindsay.
Yeah, and of course we saw these protests really ramp up on Sunday, Lena and Bakari, at a Hindu temple in Brampton. And we do have some video that people took of those protests. They got kind of violent, actually, and Peel police had to intervene. And then we saw some more tense moments on Sunday in the same area. And of course, these tensions have been going on for decades. But it has resulted now in the Indian consulate in Toronto canceling some visits from Indian officials. Those officials apparently usually come over to do various amounts of paperwork and site checks. But some Sikh separatists have alleged that they're actually using those temples to recruit informants to target Khalistan supporters. So we're hearing 2 different sides here. Of course, it can get incredibly complicated, but we are hearing from Peel Police as well today, the chief saying that they're really just trying their best at this point to figure out what happened on Monday and Sunday and to react accordingly. Here's more.
Behind the scenes, we know that the formal elders and leaders of both communities have been also calling for peace, which draws our attention to the fact that it's a small group of agitators that are intentionally causing problems, and we have zero tolerance for them, absolutely. And you'll see in the next several days some announcements of arrests that are as a result of what happened Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time to identify these individuals, but we're going to follow through.
And we're showing you now some visuals from Monday when I mentioned those kind of tense protests continued at that Hindu temple. So when it comes to these consular visits that have been canceled now, it's not clear which visits have been canceled. If you look on the website, there's actually a number that were planned for Brampton, Mississauga, even Windsor, London, Ontario. And at this point, that is not clear. And of course, as you heard from Peel Police, Lena and Bakari, we're also waiting to hear of more arrests that might be made in the coming days. Back to you.
Okay, CP24's Lindsay Biscaya live in studio. Staying in Peel and more now on our top story. So transit and other services in Brampton, they're facing disruptions and delays after 1,200 municipal employees, they went on strike.
Yeah, for more on this situation, we're joined live tonight by Brampton's Mayor Patrick Brown. Mayor Brown, thank you for joining us here on Live at 5. It's good to see you. 1,200 workers, we now know, have walked off the job. We understand talks broke down last night. The union is saying that wages have gone up for non-unionized employees, not for them, though. I know you have a different take on this, so let's begin with your position.
Well, it's disappointing. We've negotiated in good faith with CUPE for the last almost a year, and the city's final offer was that we would match the deal that was just signed in Mississauga. This summer, Mississauga signed a deal with their CUPE for 3% a year, increases for 4 years. Brampton said we'll do the very same thing. Every word of that deal identical. Unfortunately, they have unrealistic comparisons. They want to be compared to first responders, firefighters, and police. Those are essential workers that do not have the right to strike. There's danger pay that is inherently included in their compensation. Last year in Canada, we lost 7 officers in the line of duty. And, historically, Brampton has looked at Mississauga and other municipalities in the region of Peel as our barometer for being consistent on pay. That's not something, unfortunately, our local QP leadership is accepting. And because of that, we could be in a long labor disruption.
Mayor, also earlier we heard from QP Local 831 President Fabio Gazzola. He specifically, when it comes to wages, he specifically pointed out, the disparity between those who are out there doing the work versus managers. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I think he's taking shots at the managers in those departments. That's not really been a part of the negotiation. It's all been about comparisons. I think this is a tactic they're using during the strike. Our managers are actually consistently paid less than other municipalities. It's tough to keep good people, and so there is compensation involved for getting the right commissioner or the right the right director. At the end of the day, the breakdown is on comparisons, and we want to. Our city negotiating team is willing to sign the same deal that QP and Mississauga just signed. Unfortunately, the Brampton QP wants something very different than the QP in Mississauga.
Mayor, Brampton's a big city. There's a lot of people in that city, as you know, who rely on major services. And we're hearing about major disruptions tonight, especially to transit. Can you talk about the impact of this strike and what you're hearing?
Yeah, there is disruptions. There's a right to strike, and we thought that QP would strike at QP locations. Unfortunately, today they caused major disruptions for transit. They didn't let transit operators enter the station, and that's wrong. Our residents depend on transit. To prohibit and block transit operators from going to work is wrong. It's not a typical practice during a strike, and the city is going to be looking at what legal recourses are available to us to make sure that critical service is returned as soon as possible. There are legal avenues that the city can use to make sure that service is not disrupted. Our ATU operators are not striking, and so it's put them in a very difficult position.
And Mayor, there's a lot of ground. There's a lot happening there. We also want to turn to protests in Peel. In recent days now, the violent clashes between Hindu and Sikh groups. Peel's police chief says that he's concerned about resources. Police also say that more arrests are coming. Look, this is getting a lot of international attention. You have India's prime minister weighing in on this.
Yeah, what do you know about this, Mayor? What are you hearing about these expected arrests?
Well, first of all, the expected arrest is good news. Anyone who commits an act of violence should be arrested, should be charged. Anyone who commits a hate crime should be held responsible. And unfortunately, there have been agitators that really have leaned into trying to stir division and violence. And I hope that they face the full extent of the laws we have in Canada. Having said that, the leadership of both communities is calling an end for violence. I have to commend the Ontario Gurdwara Council that condemned the protest at the Hindu Sabha, and I want to commend the Hindu Sabha. There was a pundit, the name for a Hindu priest, who had some violent rhetoric in a speech, and they fired that pundit. They said we're not going to tolerate violent rhetoric, and so the leadership, the elders in both communities, have been very helpful helpful in calling for calm. And I think it's important as a society, those that break our laws, we hold them accountable. And I believe Chief Nish and the Peel Police will do that.
Okay. Brampton's Mayor Patrick Brown. We'll have to leave it there. Thanks so much for your time, and we appreciate this conversation.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Mayor Brown.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Right now it's 5:21, 12 degrees. This is Live at 5.
U.S. President Joe Biden offers his first public remarks after the election of Donald Trump. What he had to say is just ahead. Welcome back. In his first address to the American people since Donald Trump's election victory, U.S. President Joe Biden commended Vice President Kamala Harris for the campaign that she ran.
She's been a partner and a public servant. She ran an inspiring campaign, and everyone got to see something that I learned early on to respect so much, her character. She has a backbone like a ramrod. She has great character, true character. She gave her whole heart and effort, and she and her entire team should be proud of the campaign they ran.
Well, it remains to be seen whether Donald Trump and the Republicans will have full control of Congress. The race for the House of Representatives, that's not over yet, but the Republicans are leading with 206 seats compared to 191 for the Democrats. The balance of power, that's going to depend on contests in Arizona, Oregon, Iowa, and California that are just too close to call. There are still 4 races left to be called in the Senate, but the Republicans are in control with 52 seats.
524, 12 degrees. This is Live at 5.
And coming up, a sneak peek at this year's Santa Claus parade and why there are concerns there may not be a parade next year.
Well, the 120th Santa Claus Parade will usher in the holiday season in Toronto on November 24th. It's also arriving with an appeal for help to ensure the event continues next year. Got to make sure Santa comes back to town, right?
You know who got a behind-the-scenes look?
Us, CP24.
Well, the crew, not us. The CP24 crew got a behind-the-scenes look at the preparations today at Santa's Secret Workshop. 750,000 people are expected to line the parade route this year to take in the dozens of handcrafted floats, marching bands, and celebrity clowns. But rising costs have also put future parades in jeopardy. So GoFundMe campaign has been launched to save the parade for 2025. We had a chance to talk to the president and CEO of the parade about the need for more money.
As all of us are experiencing, these are challenging at times financial times, and the parade is no different. We have an amazing group of corporate partners who've continued to support us, many who've been with us for decades, and some new partners this year who've stepped up, and they're going to have amazing floats on parade day. But it's just not enough right now, and we do need a little support from the community. We've started our first ever crowdfunding campaign. We're looking to raise $250,000 in order to make a secure foundation for 2025 and ensure that there's a 121st Santa Claus parade next year.
Now, Santa himself was keeping an eye on the preparations and shared his excitement about the famous event.
It doesn't move all the time, so there's a little bit of stopping as it goes. So give yourself about an hour and a half, almost 2 hours for the parade to see the entire thing from beginning to beginning. Also, people should be aware that, of course, Taylor Swift's in town. So getting around may be a little bit more of a challenge, so give yourself plenty of time to get to the parade.
Yeah, but who's he kidding? Santa doesn't worry about traffic. This year's parade starts at 12:30 in the afternoon on the 24th. And for those who can't make it out in person, you can watch a live stream of all the action on YouTube for the first time ever.
It's 5:29 now, 12 degrees. You're watching Live at 5.
Nearly 1,200 Brampton city workers. They're on strike. Here's a live look at the picket line right now. We're going to tell you which services are impacted. It's coming up. Well, 3 people are in custody after a man was fatally stabbed inside an apartment at Kingston Road in Lawrence. It happened early this morning.
Peel police say more arrests are coming after violent clashes between Hindu and Sikh groups in Brampton.
And also in Brampton, 1,200 workers walk off the job after talks break down. We had a chance to speak with Mayor Patrick Brown about this. You're going to hear his reaction coming up.
You're watching Live at 5. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. I'm Lena Ladefat.
Now, Bakari Savage, let's get to this top story. Police have 3 people in custody. This is after a man was stabbed to death in Scarborough.
CP24's Beatrice Faisman has been speaking with residents of the building at Kingston Road in Lawrence. She joins us live with the latest. What are you hearing, Beatrice?
Lena, from residents, I'm hearing that they're certainly feeling unnerved. They tell me this was once a Toronto community housing complex that was primarily for seniors, but the demographics have changed, and with it, more violence and crime here in this building. This is 4175 Lawrence Avenue, right at the corner of Kingston Road, and it's inside this apartment building on the 10th floor that this stabbing happened just after 6 o'clock this morning. When I went up there earlier today, there's a pair of police officers standing at the door, guarding it, waiting for forensic investigators to be able to go in and actually start accumulating evidence and cataloging the evidence from the scene inside. When police responded to the call, it was a disturbance call. They got here, they found this man. I'm told he's in his 40s. That's according to the detective sergeant in charge of this homicide case. He had stab wounds. They tried to save his life. Tragically, they could not, and he was pronounced dead here at the scene. And now 3 people have been arrested and taken into police custody, a man and 2 women. And police were very careful and diligent in saying that this was not a random attack. They say the suspects and the victim, the man in his 40s, were all known to each other. The Detective Sergeant Henry Marsman from Toronto Police from the homicide squad tells me that this victim did not live here in the unit. At this point, none of the 3 people, as far as we know, have been formally charged in this homicide either. But to go back to your first question about what I'm hearing from residents, they say there's a lot of small kids that live here, a lot of single moms that live here, and certainly walking by crime scene tape and police vehicles, especially when you're taking your kids to daycare, for example, it's not a pleasant experience. And so here's a bit of what these residents have to say.
It's not fair. I have kids here. Not only me, there's a lot of people that have kids in here. I can't even bring my kids out here to come and play or to go for a walk. They're scared, and it's not safe. I have to worry about myself. I have to protect my kids. But if I don't even feel safe, how am I going to protect my kids? And it's crazy. Waking up this morning, this is not the first time, second time, like, something has to be done about this building.
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised of what I heard up this morning. It only gets worse. It doesn't get no better here. You know? There's no security in the building. Anybody can just walk in and go where they want. There's no protection here for none of us. I'm a senior living here for 22 years. I protect myself. Nobody protects me.
And so now there's a single Toronto police vehicle still in the rotunda here in front of the apartment building, obviously trying to talk to residents, the officers here wanting to make sure that their tensions and anxiety is quelled a little bit by their presence as well, in light of the fact that this is now the scene of the city's latest homicide. Back to you guys.
Okay, that's CP24's Beatrice Faisman near Kingston and Lawrence. Beatrice, thank you. Well, York police, they've released footage of a suspect wanted in a shooting in Markham.
The video, taken from multiple home security cameras, shows a suspect wearing all black clothing approach a home on Digby Crescent near Aldergrove Drive just before 4:30 p.m. yesterday. The victim was shot in the leg in the garage of a home, is expected to recover. The suspect fled in a dark-colored, newer model Acura TLX sedan that was also captured on surveillance cameras.
Well, a number of municipal services in Brampton, they're affected after 1,200 city workers, they went on strike after failing to reach a new contract.
CP24's Sija Liu joins us live with more from Brampton City Hall. You're right in front of a picket line there, Sija. We just heard from Brampton's Mayor Patrick Brown, who's calling on workers, the union, to come back to the table. What are you hearing from the other side?
Well, the other side here, they are asking for fair wages and equal benefits. The biggest sticking point when it comes to why negotiations broke down is because they want a pay increase. They also want health benefits that are on par with management. That is why they are on strike today after talks broke down after 9 months of negotiations. The union representing these workers is CUPE Local 831. They walked off the job early this morning after contract negotiations with the city failed to produce a deal. And the employees here on strike, they work in a number of departments, including public transit, parks and recreation, road maintenance, animal control, courthouse services, to name a few. All those things are being disrupted at this moment. Transit, particularly, a lot of disruptions tonight. Now, we spoke with the union president as well as Brampton Mayor Patrick Brown earlier today. Take a listen from both sides.
I can appreciate the challenge and the frustration. I'm a member of the community for 50 years, 50 plus years. All I can ask is, to be patient, plan in advance. Contact your counselors. If you go to QP.ca/Brampton, let Brampton know, should workers get paid less than management? As I said earlier, workers do the work. All we're asking for is something reasonable, comparable, what they've been given non-union, management and HR.
They want to be compared to first responders, firefighters, and police. Those are essential workers that do not have the right to strike. There's danger pay that is inherently included in their compensation. Last year in Canada, we lost 7 officers in the line of duty. And, historically, Brampton has looked at Mississauga and other municipalities in the region appeal as our barometer for being consistent on pay. That's not something, unfortunately, our local QP leadership is accepting. And because of that, we could be in a long labor disruption.
And the city says they are willing to return back to the bargaining table. In the meantime, some of the disruptions to keep in mind. The major one, transit. A lot of disruptions there during the evening commute tonight. Riders are being told to make alternate plans. Some recreation centers are also closed. Others are operating at reduced hours. Animal shelter tours are paused for now. There are also a few Brampton information kiosks that are closed. Court services also longer than usual. And building permit applications aren't being accepted. Those are just a few of the long list of disruptions that are happening tonight, but we have a full list over on our website. Back to you.
All right, Sija Liu reporting live from the picket line in Brampton. Thank you, Sija. 5:38, 12 degrees. We've lost that hour of daylight, and I don't know about you, but I am really feeling that. Adjoa, that's also affecting the drive, isn't it?
You know what it really is? It's a lot busier than normal. It's that quick change of time, which is impacting commuters as they do make their way out. The darkness is not helping your commute because now we have a problem on the 401 westbound through Warden. This is this collision that does have the right lane and shoulder blocked, and then this brand new situation on the 401 westbound in the transfers through Bayview. It is a stalled vehicle in the transfers. Because it's so dark, this vehicle has its flashers on, but still drive with a lot of extra caution as you navigate through. It's getting busier and very slow on that northbound 410 into Brampton, and the delays remain on the DVP northbound approaching Bayview Bloor all the way up to the 401. All this darkness, light eyes need to adjust. Outside of camera view, crews on scene of an ongoing collision blocking lanes on Yonge and Steeles. I'll send it back to you both.
It's 5:39, 12 degrees. Live at 5.
Coming up, Peel police say more arrests are coming in the violent protests between Hindu and Sikh groups in Brampton. We'll have more on that.
Well, Peel police continue to investigate recent protests between Hindu and Sikh groups in Brampton. More arrests are anticipated.
And CP24's Lindsay Biscaya joins us live with the latest on this developing story. It's obvious that Peel police are strapped for resources too, Lindsay.
Yeah, it seems as though Peel Police are still trying to work through this. We know that Peel Police were actually assisted by Toronto Police earlier this week when some of these tense protests broke out, and now police are kind of combing through video that they have from these protests. We have some of it here to show you to try to identify people who might be suspects and arrest them, and police say they're still working on that part. This is from Sunday, where some protesters clashed at a Hindu temple in Brampton on Gore Road, and then there was some tense exchanges again on Monday. So obviously, the division here in the conflict is decades in the making, but it has resulted in the Indian consulate in Toronto canceling some visits from Indian officials. Those officials usually come over to do various amounts of paperwork and site visits at the temples, but some Sikh separatists have alleged they're actually coming over and using the temples to recruit informants to target Khalistan supporters. So as I mentioned, a lot of conflict here that goes back in history, but now Peel police are really just trying to identify identify who broke the law in these protests and arrest them. And they say that there are going to be arrests in the coming days. We did hear from Peel Police Chief today about the arrests and how they're kind of working through everything. Here's more.
The reality, there's two principles. The more resources we have, it's an inverse outcome, is that it's actually safer for the public. But that does not mean that we can enter and cause more risk. Quite often, sometimes a small number of officers entering a large mass results in retaliatory activity, and then generally speaking, it looks like to the public that it is a worse situation. So this day and age, with the amount of video that we record, from whether it be body cameras or the cell phone videos that are coming from the community, we have the ability to identify individuals post fact and then make efforts to get them in a peaceful manner.
And so, Lena and Bakari, you were both speaking with Mayor Patrick Brown last hour about this, and he reiterated his calls for peace and says there is no place for violence in the city of Brampton. But he also mentioned the fact that many elders and community members from both sides are coming together and calling for peace as well. So he says he's hopeful that that will happen. In the meantime, we also heard from City Councillor Rod Power, who says that there is actually going to be a motion coming to council very soon to also address these protests. Have a listen to what he had to say.
We're going to come with a motion when we get back to council that there isn't going to be any type of demonstrations or protests within schools, hospitals, or places of worship. And I can guarantee you that it'll pass unanimously.
When it comes to these consulate visits, though, that have been canceled, it's not clear exactly which visits or if all of them have been canceled. We know there were visits planned for Brampton, Mississauga, Windsor, even London, Ontario. Still waiting to hear specifics on that. And of course, Lena and Bakari will be waiting over the next couple of days to hear specifics on arrests as well. We know that's coming. Back to you.
Yeah, waiting for that update from Peel Police. Lindsay, thank you. This just into CP24. Ontario's Special Investigations Unit has been called in after a deadly police-involved shooting in Orillia.
The SIU says that the shooting occurred on Cochrane Street in Orillia just before 2 o'clock this afternoon. One individual is deceased and an OPP officer was seriously hurt. The SIU adds more information will follow. Keep it here on CP24 as we follow this developing story.
Well, a new study suggests hundreds of people will lose access to supervised consumption sites in Toronto when the province shuts some of them down.
The Ontario government is closing 10 supervised consumption sites, including 5 in Toronto, at the end of March because they're too close to schools and daycares. Research with St. Michael's Hospital found that, on average, more than 500 people use the Toronto sites monthly, which are slated for closure in 2025. They say that the closures will likely lead to more public drug use and more overdoses.
Well, a group of community faith leaders are calling for more supports for those experiencing homelessness.
Toronto Mayor Olivia Chow joined the chorus of bishops, imams, and rabbis and asking for more funding from all levels of government to build more shelter spaces. Chow wants to be able to access rental supplements provided by the province in order to build 5 new shelters in the city.
In this tough times, we need to look at long-term solutions. We evict people from tents, from camps. They go to a ravine. You go to a ravine, if you move them, they go to a park. You take them out of a park, they go into TTC subway system. They go to libraries, community centers, church doors, businesses. They are on the sidewalk, on vent. Where are you going to chase these people? Because our shelters are full.
Our city, like the other cities in Canada, is still facing food insecurity and housing crisis. Uprooting these camps without providing affordable housing or safe shelter living is causing more trauma and mental health problems. If we look with our human eyes, it seems that we are moving inevitably toward a greater and greater fragmentation where every steps taken by all levels of governments are not resulting in a permanent solutions of unhoused people.
Well, also, Mayor Chow says that the city will activate their cold weather plans again this winter, which involves opening up respite centers to provide spaces for homeless to stay warm.
It's 5:47, 12 degrees. You're watching Live at 5.
And coming up, 3 people have been charged in the death of former One Direction member Liam Payne.
Welcome back. Argentinian authorities have charged 3 people in the death of former One Direction member Liam Payne.
Prosecutors say that those charged are a person close to Payne, a hotel employee, and someone suspected of providing Payne with drugs. The 31-year-old pop star had alcohol, cocaine, and a prescription antidepressant in his system. That's when he fell to his death from a hotel balcony in Buenos Aires last month.
Well, Europe's climate service says it expects 2024 to go down as the warmest year on record.
The agency says average global temperatures are set to end up more than 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels. That would make this year the first to surpass that threshold, which is the international target for avoiding catastrophic global warming. The high temperatures are being attributed to human-caused climate change as well as natural factors like the El Niño weather pattern.
If you look back at the ozone hole, we managed to get together as a global community and find a solution. Now the problem is incredibly more complex, has to do with our economic model, has to do with our way of using resources. And inevitably, this means much more complex conversation.
The report comes as officials are set to gather in Azerbaijan next week for the United Nations Summit on climate change.
Right now it's 5:52, 12 degrees, feeling like 11 outside. This is Live at 5.
U.S. President Joe Biden offers his first public remarks after the election of Donald Trump. Coming up, we're going to talk to a psychology expert about dealing with post-election anxiety.
In his first address to the American people since Donald Trump's election victory, U.S. President Joe Biden encouraged those who voted for Kamala Harris not to give up.
Setbacks are unavoidable, but giving up is unforgivable. Setbacks are unavoidable, but giving up is unforgivable. We all get knocked down. But the measure of our character, as my dad would say, is how quickly we get back up. Remember, a defeat does not mean we are defeated. We lost this battle. The America of your dreams is calling for you to get back up.
And some experts say post-election stress, anxiety, that's a real thing. So if you're trying to cope this week after the American election, you may not be alone. For a closer look at this, we're joined live by Steve Jordan, psychology professor and director of the Alt Lab at the University of Toronto. Good to see you, Professor. Thank you for joining us. Look, American elections can have you on the edge of your seat. This one was no exception. They can induce a lot of anxiety. And many people are reporting a whirlwind of emotions this week. What is your advice to manage your mental health?
Yeah. So, I mean, the options were so different. And so that people went in here with hope that the person they were backing would succeed, and often fear, no matter which side you were, that the other one, if elected, would cause a lot of, angst and really be a threat. And that's what kicks off the anxiety reaction, of course, any threat that's in front of us. And so the first recommendation is just diet how much you look at the threat. So as far as, if you find this really bothers you, I've been avoiding the TV for a large part since the election. And in addition to sort of avoiding looking at the threat, try to consider bringing some of the things into your life that make you feel good. Singing, dancing, laughing, being with the people that you like to spend time with. Maybe going out for a karaoke night right now is exactly what your body needs, because it flushes all those stress chemicals out and it allows your body to put back in the chemicals that make us feel good and that actually contribute to our health.
Okay, now also there's reports that places like Georgetown University, they had like self-care suites with milk and cookies and coloring books for students. How do you go from that to, the day after the election?
Yeah, no, I mean, it really is tricky because we just didn't know what was going to happen. And it was such a dramatic change. And of course, part of the fear that many feel when it comes to people like Donald Trump is that he's so unpredictable and chaotic. And so, the thought that we're going to have just a period of time when we don't know what's going to happen and how things are going to play out, our brains do not like that. Mm-hmm. And, if we think about it too much, we start building up all these cortisol and other chemicals that lead to burnout and exhaustion.
Yeah,
sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that's where these other activities, exercise, dancing, laughing, whatever, it's like taking a pill of a sort. It's like a way to counteract the negative effects of stress. But we have to almost schedule them. We almost have to tell ourselves, I'm going to spend some serious time every now and then working on my mental health by doing things that make me feel good and really sort of flushing those stress chemicals out.
Okay, good advice there. I've got about 30 seconds left here. Let me ask you this. There's a lot of political division, even on this side of the border. Some relationships, friendships, even ending over political rifts. How do we talk to each other, even when we disagree?
Yeah, I think common ground is so important, and really just stating this explicitly going in. If it's somebody that you care about, but you hold a different view, say, I care about you, I want to stay connected. Let's just avoid those things that drive us apart. There's so much common ground. Let's live on that common ground, keep our relationship strong, because that relationship is important to both of us. And if they feel that way, then they should be willing to go ahead and play along with that game.
Okay. Steve Jordan, psychology professor and director of the Alt Lab at the University of Toronto. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for this conversation. It's 5:59, 12 degrees, feeling more like 11 out there. You're watching Toronto's breaking news, CP24.
We're live at Brampton tonight, where 1,200 city workers are on strike.
Yeah, this is a live shot from the picket line. We'll tell you what the two sides are saying throughout the evening. Thanks so much for watching. CTV News at 6 is next.